I was avoiding my crush. Then her cat queen mother called me to the cabin for a private talk. Jax had always been intrigued by the alien planet of Vortha. It was a world that felt as though it existed outside the ordinary, a place where beauty met mystery at every turn. Towering trees stretched far into the sky, their leaves glowing softly in the twilight. Strange creatures roamed the jungles, some graceful and others terrifying, but all of them fascinating in their own right. But none of that was what caught Jax's attention the most. No, it was her, Lyra. She wasn't just another citizen of Vortha. She was the daughter of Queen Arashka, the ruler of the Feldari people. Her feline features, with long, silky fur and sharp, golden eyes, made her stand out in a crowd. But it wasn't just her beauty that captivated him. It was something deeper. Lyra possessed an intelligence and poise that made even the most powerful people on Vortha step aside when she spoke. Jax had met her on his first few visits to Vortha. She had been kind, curious about humans and their cultures. She seemed to view Jax as something of an oddity, but in the best way. He was the first human she had ever truly spoken to, and despite the cultural differences, there was a connection, a bond, that was undeniable. But as time went on, that bond turned into something more. Jax couldn't ignore it any longer. He was in love with her. He had tried to hide it, of course. He had always been good at pretending. It wasn't hard to do, especially when he was on a mission, an assignment to learn about the various alien species in the galaxy. But the more he spent time with Lyra, the more he realized how much he wanted to be with her. Yet the more he wanted her, the more he felt unworthy. She was royalty. He was a simple human traveler. She was destined to rule, to command, while he would always be bound by the limits of his own humanity. How could someone like him even think of standing beside someone like her? For days now, he had avoided her. When she sent him a message, inviting him to join her for a walk through the garden, he came up with an excuse. When she asked if he wanted to see a new piece of artwork from her people, he politely declined. It wasn't that he didn't want to be with her. It was that he couldn't bear the thought of seeing her and realizing just how far apart their worlds were. But no matter how much he avoided her, he couldn't escape her. And one evening, when the sky above the Feldari capital was painted in brilliant shades of orange and purple, Jax's isolation came to an end in the most unexpected way. It started with a message. "Meet me in the jungle tomorrow at dawn. I have something important to discuss with you." It was from Queen Arashka. Jax stared at the message, unable to believe it. The Queen, calling him for a meeting, he had met her only once briefly during a royal event. She was every bit the imposing figure one would expect from a queen. Tall, with golden eyes that could pierce through anyone, and a presence that commanded respect. Why would she want to speak with him? The message offered no explanation, only the request for his presence. Jax couldn't ignore it. The invitation was too important to refuse. What did the Queen want from him? Why now? The next morning, Jax made his way to the designated meeting spot deep in the jungle. His heart raced with anticipation. As he walked through the dense foliage, he tried to keep his mind focused. There was no reason to be nervous. But as he approached the small clearing where the Queen had asked him to meet, all his nerves seemed to bubble up at once. Standing in the center of the clearing was Queen Arashka. She was even more imposing up close, her fur gleaming in the morning light. Her sharp, feline features gave her a regal look, and her eyes seemed to hold centuries of wisdom. She was unlike anyone Jax had ever met. "Human," she said, her voice deep and rich, "I am glad you came." Jax couldn't find his voice at first. Here was the most powerful being on the planet, and all he could do was stand there, feeling small and out of place. "Your Majesty," he finally stammered, "I didn't expect." She raised a hand, cutting him off. "You are wondering why I've called you here. You're not the only one." Jax blinked in confusion. "I'm not sure I understand, Your Majesty. Why me?" The Queen's golden eyes narrowed as she studied him. "Lyra has told me much about you. Your avoidance of her, it has not gone unnoticed. I understand the difficulty of it, the hesitation." Her gaze softened just a fraction. "But this is not just about her." Jax was quiet for a moment, trying to process her words. He had always been careful not to make waves, to keep his feelings hidden. But the Queen's words made something inside him shift. "You may not know this, human," Arashka continued, her tone now more measured, "but Lyra is destined to be more than just a princess. She will one day rule this world, and with that role comes not only responsibility but immense pressure. There are many who would want to take advantage of her, her position, her power." Her eyes locked onto his. I need to know if you are someone who can help her with the challenges ahead. I need to know if you're more than just a fleeting distraction." Jax swallowed hard. Was this some kind of test? Was the queen doubting his worth? Did she see him as unfit for her daughter? He opened his mouth to speak, but the words stuck in his throat. "I will give you a task," Queen Arashka said, her voice like a soft growl. "One that will show me whether you are truly worthy of Lyra's time, whether you can be someone she can rely on." Jax's mind raced. He had no idea what kind of task the queen had in mind, but his heart pounded in his chest. Was she testing him, or was this just a strange request for help? All he knew was that he couldn't back out now. He couldn't turn his back on Lyra. "Tell me what I must do," he said, his voice steady despite the nervousness that lingered within him. Arashka nodded. "I will guide you, but remember the trials will not be easy. They will test your strength, your resolve, and your ability to adapt. If you succeed, I will know that you have the qualities Lyra needs in a partner." Jax nodded, determined. This was his chance to prove not only to Queen Arashka, but also to himself that he was capable of more than he thought. Whatever task lay ahead, he would face it head-on. And maybe, just maybe, it would be enough to change everything. As the queen turned and walked deeper into the jungle, Jax followed, his thoughts swirling. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was clear. This was just the beginning. And for better or worse, he was about to embark on a journey that would change his life, and his relationship with Lyra, forever. Jax followed Queen Arashka deeper into the jungle, his heart still racing from the strange meeting. The thick foliage around him seemed to close in as he walked, but the queen's powerful presence kept him focused. Her every step was confident, almost regal, as though she knew the jungle as well as her own palace. The air was heavy with the scent of alien flowers and the distant sounds of wildlife. Despite the beauty around him, Jax's mind was far from the jungle. He couldn't stop thinking about what the queen had said. She had called him here to prove himself, to prove that he was worthy of being part of Lyra's life. It sounded like a test, but what kind of test would it be? Queen Arashka had made it clear that she wasn't just concerned with Jax's feelings for Lyra. It wasn't enough for him to simply love her. He had to be capable of supporting her in a way that went beyond human understanding. Lyra's future was one of great responsibility, and her life would be filled with challenges that most people could never imagine. If Jax was to stand by her side, he needed to be more than just a lover. He had to be someone who could face the dangers that lay ahead. They came to a small clearing, the trees parting to reveal a scene that seemed out of place. In the center of the clearing was a pool of crystal-clear water, its surface shimmering like a mirror. The light from the sun filtered through the trees above, casting gentle patterns of shadow on the ground. The water was calm, peaceful, almost inviting. Jax stopped in his tracks. This was where the queen had led him, but what was he supposed to do now? He glanced at Queen Arashka, but she was already walking toward the edge of the pool, her eyes scanning the water as though searching for something. "You will begin here," she said without looking at him, her voice as calm and steady as ever. "Here?" Jax asked, his voice filled with uncertainty. "What do I have to do?" The queen turned to face him, her golden eyes locking onto his. There was no malice in her gaze, just quiet expectation. "This is the first trial. You must prove your ability to adapt and think quickly. You will face something in the water, something dangerous. The question is, will you be able to act when the time comes?" Jax's stomach twisted. Dangerous? In the water. He had no idea what he was up against, but his mind immediately started racing, trying to figure out what could be lurking beneath the surface. Alien creatures, no doubt. He had read about the dangers of Vortha's wildlife, predators that could make even the most experienced hunters think twice. But he wasn't a warrior, he was just a traveler, a man who had never faced real danger. Queen Arashka stepped back, giving Jax room. "Don't worry, human," she said, her voice soft but firm. "You are not alone in this trial. I will be here to watch, but the outcome depends entirely on you. Do not hesitate." Jax nodded, trying to swallow the lump in his throat. He took a deep breath and stepped closer to the water. The surface was perfectly still, almost too still. His senses were on high alert now. He didn't know what to expect, but he was ready to face it. Or at least he tried to convince himself of that. He crouched down at the edge of the pool, his eyes scanning the water carefully. For a long moment nothing happened, just the quiet, peaceful surroundings. But then a ripple formed in the water, a small disturbance barely noticeable. Jax tensed, his body ready for whatever might emerge. The ripple grew larger and Jax instinctively took a step back. His heart pounded in his chest as the water began to churn. Something was coming. And then, with a sudden movement, a creature shot up from the depths of the pool. It was fast, too fast, and Jax barely had time to react. The creature was sleek and long, its body covered in scales that glinted in the sunlight. Its eyes were large and black, staring directly at him as it lunged from the water. In that split second, Jax's instincts kicked in. He didn't think, he just acted. He dove to the side, rolling across the ground to avoid the creature's sharp teeth. His heart was racing, and every muscle in his body screamed to move to stay alive. He scrambled to his feet, searching for something, anything, that could help him. The creature didn't retreat. It circled back, its sharp claws scraping against the stone near the water's edge. Jax's mind raced as he scanned his surroundings. He had nothing but his wits and whatever tools he had on him. His hands found the sharp stone of a broken tree branch, and without hesitation, he grabbed it, using it as a makeshift spear. The creature lunged again, its jaws snapping, but this time Jax was ready. With a swift movement, he thrust the branch forward, aiming for the creature's exposed underbelly. The creature screeched, a high-pitched sound that sent a chill down Jax's spine, but it pulled back, realizing it was injured. It circled again, its movements slower now, but still dangerous. Jax's heart pounded, and he could feel the adrenaline coursing through his veins. He wasn't used to this kind of danger, but there was no turning back now. He needed to protect himself, to prove to the Queen that he could handle the pressure, that he was worthy. As the creature lunged once more, Jax took a deep breath and focused. He steadied himself, waiting for the perfect moment. When the creature got close, he drove the branch forward, aiming for its heart. The creature let out one final screech before collapsing, its body going limp in the water. Jax stood there, breathing heavily, his mind still racing. The Queen's words echoed in his mind. Will you be able to act when the time comes? He had done it. He had faced the creature, adapted to the situation, and come out victorious. But was this really the test? Or was there more to come? The Queen stepped forward, her eyes watching him with a mixture of approval and curiosity. You have passed the first trial, human, she said, her voice steady as ever. You acted with courage and you adapted quickly, but this is just the beginning. The true test lies ahead, Jax nodded, still catching his breath. He wasn't sure if he felt relief or dread. The trial had been harder than anything he had ever faced, but it was just the first step. There was more to come. And as he looked into the Queen's eyes, he knew that the journey ahead would be even more difficult than he could have imagined. You have shown promise, Arashka continued. But remember, surviving is only one part of the challenge. You must also understand how to navigate the challenges of life, not just in the jungle, but in matters of the heart and the future. Jax didn't fully understand what she meant, but he was willing to learn. He had come this far. And he would face whatever came next with the same determination. With the first trial behind him, he followed the Queen once more, unsure of what lay ahead, but resolute in his belief that he could rise to the challenge. This journey was far from over, but for the first time since his arrival on Vortha, he felt like he might actually have a chance. Jax stood at the edge of the clearing, still trying to steady his breath after the first trial. His heart was pounding in his chest, and he could feel the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. The creature he had faced was now nothing more than a lifeless form floating in the shallow pool of water, its sleek body still and motionless. He had won, but the victory didn't feel like much of a celebration. Queen Arashka had watched from a distance, her golden eyes never leaving him, her expression unreadable. Now she was approaching him, her footsteps soft against the grass and stone beneath her. The calmness in her movements was a stark contrast to the chaos of the trial. Well done, she said, her voice calm but filled with approval. You did well, human. You faced the creature with courage and skill, but this was only the beginning. The trials are not just about survival. They are about understanding, about proving you can handle the future. Jax nodded, though he wasn't sure he completely understood what she meant. The jungle had been dangerous, yes. But that creature hadn't been the only danger he might face. The trials, the Queen's words, hinted at something deeper, something that stretched beyond mere physical challenges. Queen Arashka motioned for him to follow. Come, there is more to see, more for you to learn. Jax followed her without hesitation, his mind still spinning with questions. What kind of tests lay ahead? What exactly did Arashka mean when she spoke of the future? He had always thought of this journey as an adventure, a way to explore new worlds and cultures. But now it felt different. Now he was beginning to realize that his relationship with Lyra wasn't the only thing at stake. They walked in silence for several minutes, the sounds of the jungle enveloping them. Jax noticed the way Arashka moved, always confident, always purposeful. It was clear that she wasn't just the ruler of her people. She was a leader, someone who had earned the respect of every creature on this planet. The way she carried herself made Jax feel small in comparison, but also inspired. They reached a small rise in the land where a beautiful view of the jungle spread out before them. The thick trees, the twisting vines, and the distant mountains created a landscape unlike anything Jax had ever seen. The world of Vortha was truly alive, vibrant, wild, and untamed. This, Queen Arashka said, her voice soft as she gestured to the vastness before them, is what you must understand. This is the world Lyra will one day rule. It is a world full of beauty, yes, but also of danger, uncertainty, and conflict. She will need someone who can stand beside her, someone who can protect not only her life but her kingdom. Jax listened carefully. He knew that Lyra was destined for greatness, that one day she would be more than just a princess. But he hadn't fully understood the weight of what that meant. It wasn't just about love. It was about duty. It was about responsibility, and that responsibility could mean facing unimaginable challenges. Queen Arashka turned to him, her gaze steady. You are human, Jax. You are not bound by the same traditions and expectations that the Feldari face. But that doesn't mean you don't have your role to play. Lyra will need someone who can help her navigate the complexities of leadership. Someone who can be her equal, not just in strength, but in wisdom. Jax felt a knot form in his stomach. He had always been just a traveler, a man of no particular importance. How could he possibly be the equal of someone like Lyra, let alone help her rule a planet? The queen seemed to sense his uncertainty. She placed a hand on his shoulder, a surprisingly gentle gesture. This is not about being perfect, Jax. This is about being real. She does not need a man who will try to change her, or one who will cling to her out of fear or doubt. She needs someone who can stand by her, someone who can face the challenges ahead with her. Someone who will fight for her, yes, but also for the future of her people. Jax nodded, though he still wasn't sure he understood how he could live up to such expectations. But as he looked out at the sprawling jungle at the land Lyra would one day rule, he realized that he couldn't just walk away. Not now, not after everything that had already happened. You will face more trials, Jax, the queen continued. Some will test your strength, others your mind, but most will test your heart. You must show me that you are not only capable of surviving, but that you understand what it means to be a leader, to stand with someone who carries the burden of an entire world. The weight of her words settled heavily on Jax's shoulders. He hadn't asked for any of this. He had come to Vortha simply to explore, to experience something new. But now he was caught up in something much larger than himself. And somehow, despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, he found himself determined to rise to the challenge. I'll do whatever it takes, he said quietly, surprising even himself with his resolve. I'll prove that I'm worthy of Lyra, that I can stand by her side. Queen Arashka studied him for a moment, then nodded. Good, but remember, Jax, it is not just about proving yourself. It is about proving to her that you are someone she can rely on, someone who will never falter no matter what happens. The next trial came sooner than Jax expected. After the queen's words hung in the air for a moment, she turned and began walking again, her pace steady and deliberate. Jax followed, the thoughts swirling in his mind. He had barely come to terms with the gravity of what was expected of him when they arrived at a clearing surrounded by tall, ancient trees. This is the second trial, the queen announced. You will face a test of your mind, Jax. A challenge that will require you to think as much as fight. Jax stood still for a moment, looking around. The clearing was eerily quiet, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth. In the center of the clearing was a large stone pillar, etched with strange markings. The symbols seemed to shift and change as he stared at them, as if they were alive. His eyes scanned the pillar, but the more he looked, the more confused he became. You must solve the riddle, Queen Arashka explained. But be warned, the consequences of failure are not so simple as just losing. The trial will test your ability to think beyond what you see. Jax's heart began to race again. A riddle? Was that really what this was about? He had no idea what kind of riddle the queen had in mind, but he wasn't about to back down now. He stepped forward, his mind working as he tried to decipher the strange symbols. He reached out tentatively and touched the pillar. As soon as his fingers made contact, the symbols began to glow, their patterns shifting faster and faster until they were nothing but a blur of light. Jax stepped back, stunned. What kind of test was this? "Focus, Jax," the queen's voice came from behind him. "You must understand what the riddle is asking, not just in words but in meaning." Jax took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing thoughts. The symbols, the shifting patterns, they were more than just decorations. There was a message hidden within them, something that went beyond the surface. But what was it? He stared at the pillar again, and suddenly it clicked. The answer wasn't in the symbols themselves. It was in the way they moved, in the rhythm of their shifts. They weren't random. There was a pattern, a code. Jax focused on the flow of light, watching the symbols change, waiting for the right moment. Slowly, he began to make sense of the riddle, the question that the pillar was asking. It wasn't about the symbols, not directly. It was about the way they interacted with each other, the way they represented something deeper. And then, with a sudden clarity, he understood. He stepped forward, his fingers tracing the pillar's surface, and the symbols stopped shifting. The pillar gave a soft, resonating hum, and Jax knew that he had solved the riddle. Queen Arashka nodded approvingly. "Well done, Jax. You've shown not just your strength, but your mind. There is more to leadership than physical prowess. A leader must be able to think, to solve problems in ways that others cannot." Jax felt a surge of pride. It wasn't easy, but he had done it. The queen was right. There was more to being with Lyra than just being strong. There was wisdom, understanding, and patience. And he was starting to see just how much he needed to learn. Jax felt a strange mix of pride and exhaustion as he stood before Queen Arashka, the second trial now behind him. The pillar that had seemed so mysterious moments before was now quiet, its glowing symbols dimming as he stepped back. His mind still buzzed with the answer to the riddle, the puzzle he had solved by connecting the moving patterns. But there was no time to celebrate. Queen Arashka was already moving, her gaze focused and unwavering. "You did well, Jax," she said, her voice carrying the weight of both praise and expectation. "You have proven your mind is sharp, but this trial was only the beginning. The next test will be different. It will test something far more personal." Jax's heart skipped a beat. More, he had expected physical challenges and maybe even mental ones, but personal, what could the queen possibly mean? He had already proven himself in battle and intellect. What more was there to show? The queen's golden eyes seemed to see through him as if she knew exactly what was on his mind. "This trial is not about your strength or your intellect, Jax. It is about your heart, your commitment. Can you stand by the one you love when things get difficult? Can you fight for someone else's future, even when it means sacrificing your own?" Jax's mind raced. This wasn't just a test of what he could do, it was a test of his very nature. Could he truly give everything for Lyra, for someone else's happiness, when it meant putting his own aside? They walked in silence for a while, deeper into the jungle, the air growing cooler and the sounds of distant wildlife fading into a heavy quiet. As they walked, the jungle around them seemed to change. The trees, once vibrant and full of life, grew sparse and twisted, their gnarled branches reaching out like claws. The ground was uneven, and the air seemed thick with tension, as if the very forest was holding its breath. Jax's nerves were on edge. This was different from the first two trials. This wasn't just about surviving or solving problems. This was about who he was at his core. He felt exposed, vulnerable in a way that he had never felt before. He had always been able to control his surroundings, always been able to think his way out of trouble. But this was different. This was about something that had always terrified him, commitment. The queen stopped abruptly, and Jax nearly walked into her. She was staring at something ahead, her gaze sharp and intense. Jax followed her eyes and froze. Ahead of them, barely visible through the thick trees, was a large clearing. In the center of that clearing stood a single, towering figure. It was Lyra. But she was not the Lyra he knew. The Lyra before him now was surrounded by shadows, her posture tense and defensive. Her eyes were no longer soft and welcoming. They were cold, hardened, filled with suspicion. Jax's heart sank. What was happening? Why was Lyra standing there like that? He took a step forward, instinctively moving toward her, but Queen Arashka's voice stopped him. "Do not approach her," she warned. "This is the third trial." Jax hesitated, looking between the Queen and Lyra, confusion clouding his mind. What is this? What's happening to her? This is your trial, Jax, Arashka replied. You must face Lyra's doubts, her fears, the things she has kept hidden from you, and you must decide whether you can still stand by her when you see the truth. Jax's chest tightened. He didn't understand. Lyra had always been kind to him, always shown interest and warmth. Why would she have doubts now? What could he have done to cause this? I don't understand, Jax said, his voice shaking slightly. Why would she? You will find out, Queen Arashka interrupted. But first you must listen. You must hear what she says, even if it breaks your heart. With that, the Queen stepped back, fading into the shadows of the trees. Jax stood alone in the clearing, facing the woman he loved, but she was no longer the person he remembered. The air around them seemed to thicken with tension, and Jax could feel his palms sweating as he slowly walked toward her. Lyra, he called out softly. She didn't respond. Her eyes, cold and unreadable, locked onto his. For a long moment she said nothing, and Jax couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed between them. The Lyra he had known was gone, replaced by someone unfamiliar, someone who was guarded, distant, and unapproachable. Lyra, what's going on? What has happened? Jax asked, his voice growing more desperate. He didn't understand what was happening, but he needed to know. He needed to fix it. Slowly, Lyra's lips parted, but the words that came out were nothing like what Jax had expected. You should have never come here, Jax. Jax felt a chill run through him at her words. He took another step forward, his heart pounding in his chest. What are you talking about? Lyra, I never asked for you to be here, she cut him off, her voice sharp like a blade. You think you can just walk into my life, into my world, and fix everything? You think you can save me? Jax froze, the words cutting deeper than any physical wound. Save her. He had never thought of it like that. He had just wanted to be with her, to understand her, to offer her a chance at something real. I never asked for this, Lyra continued, her eyes darkening. I never asked for someone to come in and disrupt everything. My life is not your adventure, Jax. You're a distraction. A momentary escape. That's all you will ever be. Jax felt as though the ground beneath him was shifting. He couldn't understand. This wasn't the Lyra he knew. The Lyra he knew wouldn't say such things. The Lyra he knew was kind, compassionate, wasn't she? You're wrong, Jax said quietly, his voice shaking with emotion. I'm not just a distraction. I care about you, Lyra. I care about you more than anything. Lyra's eyes softened just for a moment, but then her expression hardened again. Do you even understand what you're saying? Do you understand the kind of life I lead? The responsibility that I carry? This world, my people, they all depend on me. I cannot afford to let myself be distracted by someone like you. You're human, Jax. You don't understand. You don't belong here. Jax's breath caught in his throat. Every word she said felt like a blow, each one driving a wedge between them. He had come to this world because of her, because of the connection they had shared. But now, standing here in the clearing, he felt the weight of her words, the distance she had placed between them. I don't care that I'm human, Jax said, his voice firm. I don't care about your responsibilities or your people or the weight of your crown. I care about you, Lyra. I care about us. I'm not asking you to choose between me and your future, but I'm asking you to believe in what we have. Believe in us. For a long moment, Lyra said nothing. The wind rustled the leaves and Jax's heart hammered in his chest. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Lyra spoke again, her voice much softer now. I don't know if I can, she whispered. Jax felt the world around him go quiet. The clearing, the trees, the jungle, everything seemed to fade into the background as he took in her words. She didn't know if she could, that was the truth. And in that moment, Jax realized that the Queen had been right. This wasn't about being perfect. It wasn't about solving all of Lyra's problems. It was about standing by her, even when she didn't have all the answers. I'll be here, he said, his voice steady now. Whenever you're ready, whenever you can believe in us, I'll be here. Lyra's eyes met his, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she didn't look away. Slowly, she took a step toward him. I don't know what the future holds, she said quietly, but maybe we can find out together. Jax felt a surge of hope rise in his chest, stronger than ever. The trial wasn't over yet, but he had passed the hardest part. He had faced Lyra's doubts, her fears, and his own. And in that moment, he knew that he was ready for whatever came next. The air in the jungle was heavy, the hum of the wildlife filling the space around them. Jax and Lyra stood in the clearing, the weight of their conversation still lingering between them. Lyra's eyes had softened since their exchange, but there was still a distance in her gaze, a hesitation that hadn't been there before. Jax could feel it, even if she wasn't saying anything more. He had told her the truth. He would stand by her no matter the cost. But that truth was a double-edged sword. Lyra wasn't like him. She had responsibilities beyond anything Jax could fully understand. The future of her world, her people, and the kingdom she was destined to lead was on her shoulders. How could he, a simple human, offer her anything more than his loyalty and his love? And yet, that was exactly what he wanted to do. He wasn't asking her to choose between him and her crown, between him and her destiny. All he wanted was a chance to be there when she needed him, to be more than just a fleeting distraction. He wanted to be the one who would stand by her side when the weight of everything threatened to break her down. "I never asked for all of this," Lyra said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "The responsibilities, the expectations, the pressure, it's too much sometimes, it's always been too much." Jax listened closely, trying to understand the weight that was pressing down on her. He had never been in her shoes, never known what it was like to carry the future of an entire planet on your shoulders. But he had seen the way she looked at her people, the way she tried to balance her role as their princess with her own desires. It wasn't an easy thing, and he could see now that it had broken her in ways he hadn't fully realized before. "You don't have to carry it alone, Lyra," Jax said gently. "I'm not here to take anything from you. I'm here to help you carry it, if you'll let me." Her gaze softened a little, but there was still a wariness in her eyes. "You don't understand, Jax. There are things about me, things about this world that you can't fix. I've been trained for this my entire life. It's who I am. And sometimes I feel like I'm losing myself in all of it." Jax stepped closer, his heart aching for her. He reached out, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "Maybe you don't have to lose yourself in it. Maybe you can still be you, Lyra. Even as everything around you changes, even as you become the leader you're meant to be, you don't have to lose everything just because you have to lead." Lyra looked at him, her expression unreadable. For a long moment, they simply stood there, the jungle surrounding them both, the silence stretching between them. Jax wasn't sure what she was thinking, but he knew that the battle wasn't over yet. She was still holding herself back, still trying to protect herself from the future that was waiting for her. "I've spent my whole life preparing for this," Lyra finally said. "But sometimes I wonder if I'm ready. What if I'm not? What if I fail?" Jax shook his head, a gentle but firm motion. "You're stronger than you think, Lyra. And even if you stumble, even if you fall, you don't have to do it alone. You don't have to carry everything by yourself. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Lyra's eyes glistened slightly, as if she were on the verge of tears, but she blinked them away quickly. She let out a shaky breath, trying to steady herself. "I've always been so afraid of failing," she admitted quietly. "Of letting everyone down. Of not being the person they expect me to be. But when I look at you, when I see how you've come here, how you've faced everything without hesitation, I don't know how to be that strong. I don't know how to be everything they want me to be." "You don't have to be everything for everyone, Lyra," Jax said softly, his voice steady. "You just have to be you. You just have to be the person who's ready to fight when the time comes. And I'll be here ready to fight with you." Lyra turned away for a moment, looking out over the jungle, her back to him. Jax watched her closely, giving her the space she needed but never losing his focus. She had come so far, she had been through so much, and she was stronger than she realized. Maybe she couldn't see it now, but he could, and he wasn't going to let her give up on herself. "You're right," Lyra said quietly, her voice barely audible in the stillness. "I can't do this alone. I've been so focused on being perfect, on meeting everyone's expectations. But I've forgotten that I don't have to be perfect. I just have to be myself." Jack smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "Exactly, and that's more than enough." They stood in silence for a while longer, the weight of their conversation settling in the space between them. There was no grand declaration, no dramatic moment. Just two people, standing side by side, understanding each other in a way that was deeper than words. Finally, Lyra turned to face him again, her expression more relaxed, though still filled with uncertainty. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice quiet but filled with curiosity. Jax's smile softened. "Now we face whatever comes next, together. We've both learned something today, Lyra. We've learned that we don't have to have all the answers. We just have to be ready for whatever the future holds." Lyra nodded slowly, her eyes searching his face, as if trying to read him, to understand him in a way she hadn't before. "I don't know what the future holds either," she said, her voice a little stronger now. "But I think I'm ready to find out, with you by my side." Jax's heart lifted at her words. For the first time since they had met, he truly believed that they were on the same page. They had faced doubts, fears, and uncertainties, but now they were ready to face the future together. He had proven to himself and to Lyra that he wasn't just a fleeting distraction. He was someone who could stand beside her when everything else seemed impossible. The jungle around them seemed to shift, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The quiet stillness of the air gave way to a sense of calm, a peacefulness that hadn't been there before. Jax and Lyra, standing together in the heart of the jungle, both understood something important now. They didn't have to have everything figured out. They didn't have to be perfect, but they had each other, and that was enough. The trials were over, but their journey had only just begun. There would be more challenges, more obstacles to overcome, but Jax knew without a doubt that they would face them together. And whatever the future held, they would face it with courage, with strength, and most importantly, with each other. As they stood there in the midst of the vast, beautiful jungle, Jax knew that the real trial had always been about this, finding a way to be there for each other, no matter what. And he was ready to face whatever came next with Lyra by his side.